Atmana Ayanam Anvichan Apaha Asrakshit Suchihi Shuchihi. You know, all right, there we go. Okay. Purusho nadam vinir vidya yada sausa vinir gataha atmano yanam anvidchan apo shakshid shuchihi Purusho nadam vinir vidya yada sausa vinir gataha atmano yanam anirvichan apo shakshit shuchihi Purusho nadam vinir vidya yada sausa vinir gataha atmano yanam anirvichan apo shakshit shuchihi Manji? Sorry about that. Okay, so word forward. Purushaha, Supreme Person. Paramatma, Andam, the universes. Vinir Vidya, making them each separately situated. Yada, when. Asau, the same. Saha, he, the Lord. Vinir Gataha, came out. Atmanaha, of himself. Ayam, lying in place. Anirvichan, desiring. Apaha, water. Ashrakshit, created. Shuchihi, the most pure. Shuchihi, transcendental. All right, translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha avatar, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka. Purport. After analysis of the living entities and the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, the independent source of all other living beings, Srila Sukadeva Goswami is now presenting the prime necessity for devotional service to the Lord, which is the only occupational business of all living entities. The Supreme Lord Sri Krishna and all his plenary portions and extensions of plenary portions are non-different from one another, and thus the supreme independence is in each and every one of them. In order to prove this, Sukadeva Goswami, as promised to King Parikshit, describes herein the importance of the Purusha avatar, personality of Godhead. Even in the sphere of material creation, such activities of the Lord are also transcendental, and therefore they are also Leela, or pastimes of the Absolute Lord. Such pastimes of the Lord are very conducive to the hearers for self-realization and the field of devotional service. Some may argue, why not then relish the transcendental Leela of the Lord as exhibited in the land of Mathura and Vrindavan, which are sweeter than anything in the world? Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur replies that the pastimes of the Lord in Vrindavan are meant to be relished by advanced devotees of the Lord. Neophyte devotees will misunderstand such transcendental activities of the Lord, and therefore the Lord's pastimes in the material sphere related to creation, maintenance, and destruction are variably relishable by the prakrita or mundane devotees of the Lord. As the yoga system, mainly based on bodily exercises, is meant for the person who is too much attached to the bodily conception of existence, similarly, the Lord's pastimes related to the creation and destruction of the material world are for those who are too materially attached. For such mundane creatures, the functions of the body and the functions of the cosmic world through physical laws in relationship with the Lord are also therefore included in understanding the lawmaker, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The scientists explain the material functions by so many technological terms of material law. But such blind scientists forget the lawmaker. The Srimad Bhagavatam points out the lawmaker. One should not be amazed by the mechanical arrangement of the complicated engine or dynamo, but one should praise the engineer who creates such a wonderful working machine. That is the difference between the devotee and the non-devotee. Devotees are always full with praising the Lord who directs the physical laws. In the Bhagavad Gita, the direction of the Lord upon the material nature is described as follows. Maya dakshena prakritihi shuyate sacharacharam hitunanena kunteya jagat viparivartate. Translation. The material nature, full of physical laws, is one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendentally all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account, and thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. Men with a poor fund of knowledge, however, become astonished by studying the physical laws, both within the construction of the individual body and within the cosmic manifestation, and foolishly they decry the existence of God, taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent without any metaphysical control. The Bhagavad Gita 9:11 replies to this foolishness in the following words. Avajananti mam hudha manashim tanumashritam param bhavam ajanato mama bhuta maheshwaram. The foolish men, mudaha, do not know the personality of Godhead in his eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The foolish man thinks of the transcendental body of the Lord as something like his own, and therefore he cannot think of the unlimited controlling power of the Lord, who is not visible in the acting of the physical laws. The Lord is, however, visible to the naked eyes of people in general when he descends himself by his own personal potency. Lord Krishna incarnated himself as he is and played very wonderful parts as the Lord himself. And the Bhagavad Gita concerns such wonderful actions and knowledge. Yet foolish men will not accept Lord Krishna as the Supreme Lord. Generally, they consider the infinitesimal and infinite features of the Lord because they themselves are unable to become either the infinitesimal or the infinite. But one should know that the infinite and the infinitesimal sizes of the Lord are not his highest glories. The most wonderful manifestation of the Lord's power is exhibited when the infinite Lord becomes visible to our eyes as one of us. Yet his activities are different from those of the finite beings. Lifting a mountain at the age of 7 years and marrying 16,000 wives in the prime of his youth are some of the examples of his infinite energy. But the Muras, after seeing them or hearing about them, decry them as legendary and take the Lord as one of them. They cannot understand that the Lord Shri Krishna, although in the form of a human being by his own potency, is still the Supreme Lord with full potency as a Supreme Controller. When, however, the Munads give submissive and oral reception to the messages of the Lord, as in the Srimad Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the channel of disciplic succession, such Munads also become devotees of the Lord by the grace of his pure devotees. And for this reason only, either in the Bhagavad Gita or the Srimad Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. Om Jnanatimanandasya Gananjanjana Salakaya Chakshoroन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्री गुरुवे नमः श्री चैतन्य मनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मायं ददति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं युक्तापरकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवंश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणा रघुनाथामितं तं सजीवं सावद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादां सहगणललितं श्रीविशाखान्वितं च Nam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Nam Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Shunivari Pashkistardine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Check over here. So, Purusho nadam vinir vidya yada sao na vinir gataha atmano yanam anvrinchan aposhakshit suchi suchihi. After separating the different universes, the gigantic universal form of the Lord, Mahavishnu, which came out of the causal ocean, the place of appearance for the first Purusha avatars, entered into each of the separate universes, desiring to lie on the created transcendental water, Garbhodaka. So this is an extensive purport, not that extensive, but a little bit longer than usual. And so Srila Prabhupada makes a lot of points in the purport, and I'm not going to be able to cover them all. But the gist is the point being that this particular verse is describing Karno Dakashayi Vishnu and Garbho Dakashayi Vishnu. And so one thing is that, so if we look at the Sanskrit, I mean, some of the words, I mean, there's just like, what is this here? Specifically, I was thinking, ayanam, it means lying in place. So, like whatever, lying down. And so, what's transcendental about lying down? There's nothing transcendental about that. That word's not transcendental. We don't like, what's so spiritual about like lying down or sleeping or things like that or whatever. There's nothing intrinsically like spiritual about that. But the thing is that these are in connection with the activities and pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So because they're connected with Krishna, they're transcendental, or in relationship with his devotees. And so this verse also can be a little confusing, especially if one hasn't completely read the Srimad Bhagavatam or doesn't understand the activities of the different Purusha avatars. I mentioned them before, and I'll mention them briefly, but from Karna Dakashaya Vishnu, the universes are coming. Oh, actually, you can just bring up a verse. So bring up 10, 14, 11. So this particular verse is talking about Karna Dakashaya Vishnu a little bit, and this is a prayer from Brahma. So I'll just chant the Sanskrit. So what is this? So Kwaham Tamo Mahadaham Ka Charang Divarbu Samveshtitanda Gata Shapta Vitishtikaya Quadrig Vidha Ganitanda Paranucharya Vata Dwaroma Varashya Chate Mahitwam. And the translation is that, as Brahma speaking, what am I? A small creature measuring 7 spans in my own hand. I am enclosed in a pot-like universe composed of material nature, the total material energy, false ego, ether, air, water, and earth. And what is your glory? Unlimited universes pass through the pores of your body, just as particles of dust pass through the openings of a screen window. So this is a description of Karna Dakashaya Vishnu. So universes are coming out of the pores of his skin, and then somehow by his energy. So then all those different universes, they get the different the different elements of material nature. And then so Garbhodakashaya Vishnu enters into those universes, and then from Garbhodakashaya Vishnu comes Brahma. And so so Prabhupada opens this up by explaining that, he hints that this is not, pretty much he makes the point that these are transcendental activities. And it's important to know that for so many different reasons. So Krishna has his different avatars, and there's unlimited of them. What is it? Ramadi Morti Sukalani Ameditishta Nadavatara Makaro Bhufaneshu Kintu. So Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramatpumanya. So Krishna has unlimited incarnations. I believe it's described in one place as there are waves in the ocean. That's how many different incarnations and avatars that Krishna has. So there's unlimited different incarnations of Krishna, and all of those different incarnations are completely independent. It's not that that when Krishna comes as Varaha or he comes as Vamanadev that he's limited, and that that he's restricted or in some way, or that he's ugly. Read the descriptions of Varaha's appearance was a couple days ago, so you don't read the descriptions that the Lord came down in the form of a despicable boar or anything like that. That's not the case. You read that the Lord came down in the transcendental form of a boar, and all the demigods were amazed, and it was beautiful, and they were all offering prayers, and he did amazing activities. And so many other forms, the Matsya avatar, all these different, all the different incarnations, Krishna is glorified. There's some guy walking on the street, and whatever, he's driving, some random guy's driving a car, so many thousands of people are driving cars, and then, whatever, they turn left to right and go to work. Nobody's glorifying their activities. But Krishna appears as a fish, and whatever incarnation he does amazing things. And he's glorified for that eternally. And then there's so many different slokas talking about, like that. Uttama sloka is is the name of Krishna. He's glorified by slokas or hymns. And all the different devotees, when they glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they mention his transcendental pastimes. There's so many. One that comes to mind is, what is this? Pralaya Payasi Didu Shupta Shakti Mukyebhya Shruti Ganama Panitam Prayota Dahatva Ditijam Aktayadu Brahmasya Avatanam Tam Aham Akilametum Jimamina Natosmi. So this is a prayer from Satyavata Raj glorifying Matsya Avatar. That he specifically these two, that he killed the demon who was causing some problems to Brahma, And then also he protected the Vedas, and then he saved some of those rishis and sages and things from the devastation. And then there's Korma Avatar also. In the 12th canto, there's a sloka, and you pull that up actually. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's 12:13:3. I might be wrong, but that's also a nice one. I'll have to see the. You can go to the index too, if it's not the third one. Oh, sorry, it's 12:13:2. So, and then that's anyways. This I don't know if I'll be able to chant the Sanskrit properly, but what is so Prishte Madhyam Amandam Mandaram Giri Garavagrad Kanduyanan Niralo Kamanta Kriter Bhagavata Shwana Nilaha Pantuva Yat Samskara Kalanu Vantara Vasad Vela Nibenam Basham Yatha Yatam Atandritam Jalanedher Nat Yapi Visham Yati. So the translation of this verse is very amazing actually. So when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as Lord Kurma, a tortoise, his back was scratched by the sharp-edged stones lying on massive, whirling Mount Mandara, and this scratching made the Lord sleepy. May all of you be protected by the winds caused by the Lord's breathing in this sleepy condition. Ever since that time, even up to the present day, the ocean tides have imitated the Lord's inhalation and exhalation by piously coming in and coming out. And anyway, we'll just read the purport here, just for transcendental pleasure. At times, we alleviate an itching sensation by blowing upon it. Similarly, Srila Bhakti-Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur explains the breathing of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can alleviate the itching sensation within the minds of mental speculators, as well as the itching of the material senses of conditioned souls engaged in sense gratification. Thus, by meditating on the windy breathing of Lord Kurma, the tortoise incarnation, all categories of conditioned souls can be relieved of the deficiencies of material existence and come to the liberated spiritual platform. One must simply allow the pastimes of Lord Kurma to blow within one's heart like a favorable breeze, then one will surely find spiritual peace. So anyways, I'm mentioning these verses. That's a really nice verse. A lot can be said about that. But the great sages and devotees, I believe, maybe this is Sudha Goswami speaking this, but they glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead in his different forms or incarnations. Just like we have different pictures up on the wall of Krishna and Lord Chaitanya, but then we also have, a picture here of Vishnu. I forget specifically which. There's a specific name of Vishnu that comes to save Gajendra. I forget that exactly now. But Vishnu comes to save Gajendra. Then down there we have Karnodakashayi Vishnu at the end, with the universes coming out of the pores of his skin. So Krishna is amazing, and all of his different incarnations are amazing. And so they're not. The point is that they're not material; that they're spiritual. And the Lord engages in those different pastimes. Generally, what's this? Paritranayam sadhunam vinashchaya saduskatam dharma samstapanaplaya sambhavami yuge yuge. He either comes to destroy the atheist or he comes to protect his devotees. Those are some of the reasons that he comes, or to establish a dharma. So the Supreme Personality comes in every age or every yuga, and he comes in different societies. Sometimes he comes as a demigod, sometimes he comes as an animal, sometimes he comes as a bird. There's Hamsa Avatar mentioned in the 11th canto, and he speaks amazing philosophy. Sometimes he comes as Lord Brahma. That's mentioned that if there's no qualified jiva to be Lord Brahma, and then Vishnu will take that post and engineer the universe. And there's so many different ways, and then Kurma, tortoise, and all these things. So Srila Prabhupada makes the point here, and we'll get more to that later. But people hear that and they think, well, it's just legend. It's some legend, whatever. Like there's different legends in the material world there's whatever. There's so many different legends that there's anyways we won't go there, but. For instance, I know this so much because I grew up in Florida, but there's this whole thing about Ponce de Leon coming, to Florida looking for the fountain of youth. So there was this legend back then that there was you drink this water and you become eternally youthful. So it's not like there's Krishna's pastimes aren't something like that like, that's like some secret there or whatever. Like Dwarka's like, some secret legend, and then like if you go under the water, you'll find like some buried treasure or something like that. That's not Krishna's pastimes. Their history. When we discuss Krishna's pastime, we're not discussing some stories or like, it's like story time, and like we're telling them, and it's like, okay, we heard these pastimes, just like, whatever. People may discuss pastimes of Lord Ramachandra or something, and then like, okay, like, we told those stories, so now we know how to act like good in this world, and it's like some inspirational story or something. This is nonsense. These are historic pastimes, and of course, whatever great men do, common and follow, and Krishna sets that example. Yed yed archariti shreshtas. So, but the pastimes in the history of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is ultimately for our purification, and of course we should follow him. But it's not just some fable or something like that. Just like you have, there's Aesop fables, and there's different like stories like that. And anyways, I forget like some of the famous ones, but that just like this was it. I think Pancha Tantra or something, but there was like these stories told to kings. There's Niti Shastra, and then they would explain things. And so, like for instance, like there's like one story in there, and there's so many, but I'm trying to think of one that Prabhupada specific. There's one that I think that Prabhupada quotes. He would tell a story one time that, like for instance, there's Prabhupada's told this, but there's like a crane that's like meditating because he's gotten so old, and so he can't like catch fish anymore. So he's sitting there meditating on the water, and so all the fish come, and then they're like scared to come close or whatever. And there's different, I think, renditions of the story. So then they're like surprised, and then the crane tells them like, oh, like I've renounced and I don't eat fish anymore, and I'm simply like meditating and doing austerities. And so the crane is, meditating, and then all the fish come, and they won't come close. And eventually they begin to trust the crane, and they go close, and then the crane eats the fish. So then, like Prabhupada would tell that story, and there's different like understandings of that. But one understanding is like, like whatever that I don't forget the exact meaning of that particular story. But I mean, one obvious one is that. You can't trust a thief or something like that, or someone, it's very difficult for one to overcome his nature, or if like someone, or like whatever, too much devotion is a sign of a thief or something like that, or whatever. There's so many different things. So Krishna's pastimes are some stories like that they mean something or whatever, along those lines. So then there's different like things in history of that. So it's not some legend and it's not some mythology. And so the important point that one important aspect that Sukadeva Goswami is making is that, so the pastimes of the Supreme Lord, they're transcendental. And he's explaining these things because it's an important point to know. But so Krishna is engaging in his pastimes, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes a point here that these pastimes, that they're for advanced devotees. And so, I mean, obviously, we discuss and we hear the pastimes of Krishna and the association of devotees, and they're explained properly in context to all of other Krishna's Leelas. But the important thing is that, I mean, we have the association of Srila Prabhupada and great acharyas and the pure devotees that explain these things to us. And so we don't get the misconception that, there's this Krishna's pastime in Vrindavan, and then, these other pastimes aren't important, or the material. Because that's the problem, actually. If we think that, that Vishnu is creating the material worlds, and the universes are coming out of the skin, and he's entering into them. But then when he enters into the universe and he interacts within the universe, those are material pastimes. But when he's not in the material world, they're spiritual. Or when he's Krishna, that's spiritual, and he's Ram, that's spiritual. But when he's Mohini Murti, that's material. And when he's in the universe is Vishnu and he sees the demigods, that's material. Because how can they see his spiritual body, what material? So there's a misconception. And so the acharyas, they make the point that we have to explain these properly, because otherwise then we're making offenses to the holy name. If we're chanting Hare Krishna, but we think that that's one of the offenses. It's not said exactly like that, but it's like to take the name of Vishnu as the same as Brahma or Shiva or whatever. So if we think that Shiva has a transcendental body, But if we think that Brahma, he's a jiva and he has a material body, and so does Vishnu because they act together. So it's the point is that we have to understand the Siddhanta properly, and if we have these misconceptions about Krishna as Purusha avatars, or then we'll make offenses and we won't be able to chant the holy name properly. We'll chant with so much devotion and whatever. I love Krishna and Vrindavan, and I love the gopis and this and that. We'll speak so many high things, and I cry when I'm in kirtan. But then it's like I don't understand like the Supreme Personality of Godhead and truth. And so that's the whole Janma Karma Chame Divyam Evam Yo Veti Tattvataha Twadeham Punarjanma Naitimam Veti Sorjuna. So Krishna makes a point when who understands, my Janma Karma, my activities. Krishna's activities are Divyam. Janma Karma Chame Divyam. So Krishna has activities, he has karma, but it's not karma like me and you. We do some activity and, whatever, we get a headache, we eat too much, we have to go lay down, we drink too much, it's like we have to, we're running to the bathroom, or we drink the wrong thing and then we get, dysentery or something like that. But, Krishna's activities are divyam. Our activities are not divyam. So Krishna has his activities that he engages in. And so they're transcendental. So it's an important point to know. And Srila Prabhupada is really stressing that point in this whole purport about that aspect. And so we should understand these things. And so Krishna's pastimes are there. They're advanced pastimes. And so the thing is that when Sukadeva Goswami, before explaining Krishna's pastimes to Maharaj Parikshit, he explained, the first 9 cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. And within that, there's a little hints of Krishna's pastime, just like we read, I think, in chapter 7. Let me see here. I think it's chapter 7. Yeah, chapter 7, the scheduled incarnations. So within that, there was some hint of Krishna's pastimes. Also, within the first canto, there's some discussion, a little bit of Krishna's pastimes. So Krishna's pastimes are mentioned, kind of sporadically through the through the Srimad Bhagavatam. There was like some 8 verses mentioned in that chapter. Then there's Krishna entering into Dwarka. That's there, and in the Srimad Bhagavatam, I think that's chapter 11 in the first canto. And so those things are mentioned. And then in the third canto, as we'll see, there's some description of Krishna's pastimes with Uddhava, a couple of chapters that are mentioned in brief. There's something, I forget that. There's some mention of, I forget exactly, but like it's kind of like Nam Kirtan, but there's like some great acharyas, they'll sing like the Lord's pastimes, but like very in like condensed form. They'll just like mention one thing here or there, but then it's like can be unpacked unlimitedly. There's this thing, I forget exactly what it's called, but the Ramayana is like that. There's like some song that His Holiness Bhakti Vikash Maharaj sang one day on the appearance of Ramachandra, and it was like the Ramayana at glance. So anyways, but if you know the pastimes, then you can really unpack them. So the Srimad Bhagavatam hints at different parts of that, but then the 10th canto really brings it to as we were discussing before, the ultimate shelter, ashraya, which is specifically Krishna and his pastimes in Vrindavan, where he's interacting with his devotees, and then also too in Dwarka and Mathura, in that sense. So, but then then one should understand when he gets to the 10th canto that Krishna's engaging in these pastimes. He's creating the material world. He's empowering Brahma to the secondary creation Visarga, and he's in charge of the material elements. Just like we were reading that verse with Lord Brahma, he's explaining, in that sense, unlimited universes are coming through the pores of his skin. He's in a transcendental position. He's greater than all the demigods. He's supplying everything. I mean, there's so many different descriptions given. We see, like for instance, in the 7th canto, there's the narration of Hiranyakashipu. So Hiranyakashipu became, the topmost in the material world practically. He had so much material power, so much intelligence, so much strength, so much everything. But then he was easily killed by Vishnu, by Nrsingadev. So that's mentioned, and so then it's understood that when we get to because otherwise then there's a misconception. So we read about that Hiranyakashipu was so powerful, but then Krishna ran away from a fight from Jarasandha. So how do we understand that? Jarasandha is thinking that that he scared Krishna. Krishna jumped off the mountain. So was Krishna not powerful enough to defeat Jarasandha? It's like, it's crazy. Or, why did Krishna wait so long to kill Kamsa? Or all these different things. There could be some confusion. So anyways, and then there's so many different things that can be discussed in relationship to that. Krishna's in Vrindavan. He's crying as a little baby. And so what, is he a little baby, or did he grow up and become powerful, or like, how do we understand that? And then Brahma was actually confused, and that's what that whole chapter is about. Unlimited pores of, unlimited universes are coming from the pores of your skin. But then it's like, but then at the same time that it's seen that Krishna, he's crawling around and he's playing in the dirt, and he's grabbing the tail of the cow. So like, what's going on? So the thing is that Krishna's enjoying his pastimes with his devotees. But the whole other 9 cantos are meant to give us a firm philosophical basis by which we approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by which we approach Krishna. And even within that 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam also, there's a discussion of philosophy. It's not that the 10th canto is all just pastimes and no philosophy. Philosophy is there to make sure that there's no misconceptions in understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we also don't see, too, that, Parikshit Maharaj is a great devotee, but it wasn't that when Sukadeva Goswami was explaining those things that he was thinking, well, this is pretty boring. This isn't like, this isn't so interesting. Could we talk about something, some nectar, something, something intriguing, something amazing? I'm bored hearing of, the creation of this material world and of Vishnu and all this stuff. I want to hear the real nectar. So Parikshit Maharaj none of those words did not come out of Parikshit's mouth. He wasn't bored to death. So he was very intrigued and very interested. And we actually see too, if we look at, Prabhupada discussed so much, but even Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur mentions so much so in as Bhakti Vikas Maharaj is giving a seminar on these verses, explaining. So these Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur left these different slokas explaining the nature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the nature of one who is actually an elevated devotee and what that means and what that constitutes, and one who is actually on the Paramahamsa platform. So in one of those slokas, he makes the point that one who is actually a great elevated devotee, he doesn't make the distinction that any of the Lord's pastimes are mundane or that the Lord has a mundane body. So the thing is that someone may be professing to be a great devotee or very elevated or, whatever, some Paramahamsa, and usually, they do some nonsense thing and it's very obvious. But if someone is claiming to be very advanced and I'm a very, whatever, they're a very advanced devotee, when they hear Krishna's pastimes, they cry, and they just chant Hare Krishna all day, and they just eat just like a spoonful of rice or just drink a little milk, and that's all. They're very advanced devotee. But then if they speak and they say something that like Krishna, when he expands and he creates this material and it destroys it, that's material and it's not very interesting. And we know immediately that a person is not an advanced devotee because he's made a distinction. So according to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, this person's a cheater and they're not on the transcendental platform. So it's important to know all these things. So Sukadeva Goswami explained these things, and we hear them also. And the thing too that we shouldn't think, just like Prabhupada says here at one point, I won't find it exactly, but he says that these pastimes are for those that are materially attached. And so we should understand that, or at least we should be humble enough to admit that we may have some material attachments. And it's beneficial for us to hear these pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and understand them properly. And this will actually help us in our Krishna consciousness. Because the thing is that, we can hear Krishna's pastimes. We should hear Krishna's pastimes. We should read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. We should discuss all these things. But we shouldn't just focus on those things. And Srila Prabhupada stopped that. And so if we discuss these things and we understand the Sarga, Visarga, and then the Nirodha, all these different things properly, then Krishna will be endowed with Vigyan, and then we'll be able to understand Krishna's intricacies more. And we'll also appreciate Krishna's pastimes more too. Well, because then we'll think, just like Brahma, like how amazing it is. You're doing all these wonderful activities in Vrindavan, But then simultaneously, all these universes are coming out of the Pure Jita's skin. But then also, too, we see from another perspective that, that Krishna is so powerful and so amazing that it just, he does all those things just like, it's just, he doesn't have to think about it, stress himself. He's so powerful and like that. Like Prabhupada would say that, Krishna's, in Vrindavan, he's at home chilling out, and then, whatever. He's at work in the material world, in the sense. So he's, not that he's ever working, he has nothing to do. He says that in Bhagavad Gita. But he, by his energies, he's maintaining in the material world out of his mercy for the conditioned souls to enjoy separately. And then he sends his representatives out of his mercy also to bring those souls back that want to get to know him. So Srila Prabhupada also makes the point in the purport about, that the scientists, they have so many different material laws. And anyways, we don't need to go into them. But the point is that there's all these laws, and scientists can, analyze their brain and study them and look at them and all these things. But then who's the actual law maker? Who's creating all these laws? And then they have different theories about why the laws are the way they are and why they work. But the main thing is that the laws that are in place, they were created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada actually translates this verse, very interesting actually. And if we read Srila Prabhupada's books regularly, we'll see that sometimes he quotes verses from the Bhagavad Gita or the Bhagavatam or different things, and he gives a completely different translation on them. Like if you look at this verse, I won't do that now, but Prabhupada doesn't I'm speaking this verse, Maya Dakshina Prakritihi. So in this verse, Srila Prabhupada, you can leave it, you don't have to bring it up, but he brings up this point about physical laws, and that's not mentioned in the translation that Prabhupada gives in the Bhagavad Gita. I'll just read that real quick. So the material nature, full of physical laws, is one of my different energies. Therefore, it is neither independent nor blind. Because I am transcendentally all-powerful, simply by my glancing over material nature, the physical laws of nature work so wonderfully. The actions and reactions of the physical laws work on that account. And thus the material world is created, maintained, and annihilated again and again. So the physical law, so Prabhupada is bringing, and then we also see Srila Prabhupada did a similar thing in this book, Easy Journey to Other Planets, with explaining this matter and antimatter. And then similarly, he brought up quotes from the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, which they talk about the nature of the soul, explaining them as antimatter. So the physical laws. So the point is that scientists are studying all these things, and anyways, it's devotees that are competent. I'm not competent at all, but they can explain, in a scientific way about how these physical laws are there, but then how they ultimately come back to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the point, one will have to use his intelligence, but to bring these physical laws back to the point that Vishnu is actually creating the material worlds, that he's glancing on it, and then these things come, and then you have these elements and like that. So we want to speak the message of Srimad Bhagavatam, and we want to explain these physical laws, and we want to bring the scientists to the conclusion that that this is that these laws are put in place by Garbhodakashari Vishnu, by Shirodakashari Vishnu, by Mahavishnu, which Karnadakashari Vishnu. We want to do that. Prabhupada makes a point here that so taking it for granted that the physical laws are independent without any metaphysical control. So so one aspect of preaching is that that devotees bring to the scientists a conclusion that there's a metaphysical controller, that there is a living being, and that is Vishnu, which is explained in the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Shastras, that is how these physical laws are coming about. And you should similarly be interested in that. You're interested in all these physical laws and everything, then you should know the person that created them also. So that aspect of preaching is there. And let's see here. So, and Prabhupada also, in the next purport, he goes on, and we talked about that some, that, foolish people, that they think that, anyways, that there's no controller, and that, when, that the Lord, Krishna may be a person, but he has a physical body, and he's under, the physical laws and all these things. It's due to ignorance. It's due to a poor fund of knowledge. Krishna descends to be seen by the people, but that's out of his mercy that he allows them to see him. And Prabhupada goes on to explain that he does wonderful activities. So Prabhupada makes an interesting point at the end of the purport. He says, when the Murads give submissive and oral reception to the messages of Srimad Bhagavatam, I'm kind of paraphrasing, through disciplic succession, then the Murads become devotees by the Lord's grace and his pure devotees. And he goes on to say that in the Bhagavad Gita or Bhagavatam, the pastimes of the Lord in the material world are delineated for the benefit of those men with a poor fund of knowledge. So even if we are, a great, highly elevated devotee and we're completely absorbed and the Vrindavan Leela and, all that prem and high-level stuff, the devotees will still explain these pastimes of the Lord to elevate those who are not fortunate to be on that platform, so that they can become purified. Because we need to understand, where we're at, the material world. The Srimad Bhagavatam, for instance, if we look at the first verse of this chapter, was Atra Sargos Visargascha Stanam Poshanam Utayaha Manvanre Tanu Kata Nirodo Muktir Ashrayaha. So it describes all these different 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam. And Srimad Bhagavatam is this Amalam Purana, and then the Dharma Proti Devakaitavo Atra, Nirmat Saranan Saptam. So Srimad Bhagavatam kicks out all types of cheating religion. It's a spotlessly pure Purana. So that's being established in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we can understand that this, all these different things, the 10 subject matters of Srimad Bhagavatam, they're not material. So the devotees, they speak these things for the benefit of the conditioned souls. And so also, too, another understanding of that is that there are people out there that are, they don't know if God exists or not. And they're inclined to, learn about God or know about God, but then, they may have looked at different religions, but then there's not very much clear explanation of God. That for some religions, they say that, God created the world, and he said, let there be light, and there was light. And then it's just like the subject of creation is just like whatever, a couple, sentences. But we can see in the Srimad Bhagavatam that there's chapters and chapters and so many pages. I mean, there's unlimited literature there dedicated to explaining how the Supreme Personality of God creates the material world and what he does and the functions of that. And, there's so much detail that's given there. And so there's people that if they hear this, then they'll be convinced that, they may not understand it, but then they'll see that there's actually something here, and it's very descriptive. And so we have to, so anyways, the point is that there's men that are willing to accept that. And just like they're trying to build this Vedic, the Temple of Vedic Planetarium. So, and then the fifth canto's, there's discussion in there. So that's, the point of that is that people will come and they'll see the structure of the universe and the different planets, and then, how life is on those different planets and how it's situated and how it's created. And then these things are discussed there, about Brahma, about Shiva, about Vishnu. All these different things are given there. And so the point is that people will come and they'll get that understanding of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then also, too, there's an understanding in the beginning of these cantos about the material, Virat Rupa, of the Supreme, seeing the Supreme, at least the beginning steps of seeing God, within the material world, that his bones are like the mountains and things like that. And I think the hairs is like the grass or something, or the trees, something along that. I forget exactly. And then the sun and the moon, it's his eyes, and then the day and night is, I forget exactly, like his blinking or something. There's different descriptions given in different places. So the general populace, they may not understand all these things generally, but then they should go and see that and tour the Vedic Planetarium. And then afterwards, they should begin to conceive that there actually is a supreme, that there's some higher power. And so when they begin to believe in that, then they can begin to understand, more about the nature of the absolute truth. That there's this amazing thing in the material world. They accept that, and we see that usually primitive, uncivilized society or cultures, they have some conception of the absolute and like the sun and things like that. And then so we want to take that further. That this is there. You believe that there's a supreme controller. All these different things are there, but a little bit higher than that. There's this personal form, and the Vedas talk about that. And so from this form, There's Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, the universes are coming, but they're not just this one universe. There's unlimited universes. So if there's unlimited universes, and then, anyways, you can go on with that. So then, how are those all being maintained? It's like, we take, something, the sun is supreme or whatever, but then there's so unlimited suns in all unlimited universes. So then obviously there's something above the sun, and then like that. And then there's Karnodakashaya Vishnu. It's from him that all these different universes are coming. And then, but then Karnodakashaya Vishnu also, that's not the end there. Just like yesterday was Nityananda Prabhu's appearance. So this verse actually is discussing Nityananda Prabhu indirectly, because we understand from Krishnadas Kaviraj, what is this? Sankarshana Karayana Toya Shai, Garbhoda Shai, Garbhoda Shai, Chapayobidi Shai, Shesha Sheshamsa Kalashanitya, Nandakya Rama Smarnam Mamastu. So Krishnadas Kaviraj in his Mangalachanam of Chaitanya Charitamrita, he's explaining that Shesh was a Sarkarshan. So from so there's Sankarshan, and so he's expanding, and then from Sankarshan is coming Karnodakashaya Vishnu. So we're discussing Karnodakashaya Vishnu today. So where does he come from? He comes from Sankarshan, and then we go back further. Then from Balaram, ultimately, Balaram, Horilo, Nitai. So Balaram and Nityananda are non-different, and then we understand that Balaram is an expansion of Krishna. That they're non-different also. Different roles they play. I was going to read some verses about that, but anyways, I don't have time. But then we also, anyways, I can paraphrase. So then we have that so then we bring people to that understanding. It's a roundabout way, but some people they'll come to that way. Not everybody may get Prabhupada's books and read and move into the temple and things, but then they'll begin their spiritual journey in that sense by appreciating the material cosmos. But then they're instructed properly by devotees who are following in that line, and they explain these things. So then they understand that all these Karnodakashaya Vishnu, and then he's expanding. There's a spiritual world and all these amazing things. And then Sankarshan is expanding. Well, then we have ultimately is coming from Balaram, and then you can explain the quality, the unlimited glories of Balaram. That Balaram is the foremost servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then we also understand all these amazing things are happening in creation. And anyways, I guess I'll just paraphrase it. But it's mentioned in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in one of the purports that this is just the pastimes of Balaram, actually, that he's doing this for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So then that plays a whole completely different role of what we're reading here. A different understanding of that Karnodakashaya Vishnu, Garbhodakashaya Vishnu, all these different Purusha avatars and these expansions, that they're expanding for the pleasure of Krishna, to facilitate his pastimes, and to serve him, actually. And so then it gives a whole other explanation. So when one understands all these things properly, then one can begin to understand, the actual pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and then how he's engaging in service. And then it's a different perspective, actually. So then when the devotees are explaining these things, then they're explaining in that line, understanding, that Krishna's doing this to facilitate the pastimes, and this is just his Leela. And then so they don't understand that it's material, or it's not spiritual, it doesn't have anything to do with Krishna's, Vraja Leela and the gopis and all. There's a misconception. So, and then Nityananda Prabhu, he's, and then also too, if we don't understand that properly and we hear the pastimes of Nityananda Prabhu, we'll get confused. And then just like other people, they got confused with the Dvaita Acharya. There was some discussion of that. But Advaita Acharya and Nityananda Prabhu were fighting. And so then they think, they're fighting, and then it's, they don't like each other. But then it's like Advaita Acharya is Mahavishnu, and then Nityananda Prabhu is Balaram, and all, practically from him he's expanding. It's like, there's no proper understanding of the Siddhanta. So anyway, so the thing is that this is so all these things are happening for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then so, Balaram being in the, what is Prabhupada said in one place, or maybe in a conversation, he's the original servitor of Godhead. He's the Adi Guru. He's the biggest servant of Krishna. So all these things are there for the pleasure of Krishna, to facilitate his pastimes and to serve him. And then also Balaram, he expands in different ways as the paraphernalia of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to serve Krishna in that sense. And there's descriptions given of this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, giving Nityananda Tattva, and of understanding Nityananda properly, So then we come back also. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yoveti tatvataha. So we have to understand all these different things in truth of the different the different incarnations of the Lord. Isha Avatara Tardakam Taprakasham Chita Chakti Krishna Chaitanya Samgyanakam. So we have to understand the devotees, the incarnations, the avatars. There's so many Leela avatars, Guna avatars, Mano avatars. We have to understand Krishna in truth. And the only way that we can understand Krishna in truth is if we hear in disciplic succession. That's the only way. We have to hear from authorized sources. So if we hear from authorized sources and we explain as in that authorized line, then there'll be an effect, and there'll be There'll be Om Jnana Timanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. By hearing from the Guru and those in the disciplic succession, there will be illumination, there will be clarity, there will be lucidity. Things will be able to be understood in truth and properly, and material desires will go away, and we'll understand our position in this material world, and we'll understand the material world properly. So there's a couple of things there. So anyways, I'll kind of stop there if there's any questions or comments about anything. Just some thoughts on Krishna's Purusha avatars.
Just a small comment. Thank you for your well-rounded class. And you mentioned how you, being brought up in Florida, there's this concept of the fountain of youth.
Yeah.
And just thinking about my past, I remember going to school as a kid, and the children were entertained, the students, with something called a wax museum.
Oh, yeah.
And so I was given the role of playing Ponce de Leon. And so I remember researching and going into this. I had to dress like him. People would come up, and they'd step on a button in front of you, and then you'd have to give some spiel. Yeah. And they'd walk away, and you'd have to freeze like this, pretend like you're a statue.
That's funny, yeah.
So I was Ponce de Leon. But, we understand the fountain of youth. You can't gain eternal life through some material object.
Yeah.
And you see that people in this world are obsessed with makeup and, decorating their bodies so that, eternal, there's like beauty shops everywhere that have these silly names, eternal beauty or everlasting beauty. But, the material body is just going to wear away. So the proper understanding that's given in the Bhagavatam is by glorifying Krishna we gain eternal life. That verse of the rising and the setting of the sun like that, it takes away the duration of one's life. But glorifying Uttama Shloka, you gain that eternality. So thank you for explaining this.
Thank you. Yeah, there's also that verse. We think that we're very beautiful, but Krishna becomes, beautified just by, he puts the ornament on his body and he becomes beautified. Or the ornament becomes beautiful. But we put, different things on our body to try to look beautiful. But Krishna, the things he puts on his body, they become beautiful. But there's a, Naivatmana Prabharyam Nija Labha Punya. So Labha Punya, so Krishna is completely full and complete within himself. So he's not lacking anything. He's not lacking beauty. He's not lacking jewels, money, youth, anything. He's completely full. So, anyways, you had something?
Just a comment.
Yeah,
turn it on. Anyways, you're talking about Krishna expands himself to facilitate his pastimes and allow his devotees to serve him. And that really caught my ear, and I just was thinking that Krishna expands himself as Shastra.
Yeah.
Maybe this is, you can correct me if this is improper understanding, but Krishna expands himself as the Shastra to facilitate the pastimes of book distribution and allow devotees to serve him in that way.
Yeah, you can say that, yeah. That's there. Shastra Dana, because it's not that, whatever. We don't, for instance, obviously, we don't we have the Bhagavad Gita and we treat that with respect. It's not it's the book and whatever. Yeah. It's there's, the book Bhagavat and person Bhagavat. They have different, but there's also that verse, I don't know the Sanskrit, but it's mentioned that when Krishna left, the planet, that he expanded as Srimad Bhagavatam. along those lines. So the Srimad Bhagavatam and Krishna are not different, and also Bhagavad Gita and Krishna are not different, because it's the words of Krishna about Krishna. So yeah, definitely.
You said Shastra Dana?
Shastra Dana means like charity, like giving Shastra as charity.
Oh.
So like, for instance, like, you know, or like in that, like, it's like charity in the sense of not like some like, you know, like whatever, I'm going to give you like $1 million and like you open up a hospital, but the charity in the sense of like giving to those that are like suffering. So everybody's suffering in the material world. So then, like, you know, Krishna speaks this message to Brahma, and then Brahma speaks it to Narada, Narada speaks it to Vyas, you know, like that. So the Shastra Dana of the guru-disciple relationship of speaking, the Vani of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like that. That's what I meant by Shastra Dana. Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for your amazing class, Prabhu. So, I remember I was in UCF with Moses Prabhu and Janani Krishna Prabhu, and we were distributing books. And like, you know, Prabhupada says here, like, you know, foolish men think that Krishna is like a normal person.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, some people think he's like a folklore, like myth and like something.
Yeah.
I remember I was like distributing books, and there was like this guy he was like at first, you know, he was like kind of cool, but then like the more I talked to him, he was like super envious of Krishna actually.
Yeah.
He was like making a big offense. He was actually like saying that Krishna is like, he's like, yeah, you know, I looked up what like, you know, Krishna is, and he was like saying like, yeah, he's like, yeah, he's basically like a demigod, or like, yeah, he's like, yeah, he's basically just like Hercules. He's just like it's just a myth. It's like a story tale, basically. He was saying. I was like, oh my god, like I was like, because that was like the first time I'd like heard someone like say like, oh, like, you know, Krishna's like a myth, or like, I mean, obviously, like, I know like people don't know, like people don't think like Krishna's like real, but like actually hearing it for the first time, I was like, well, like this guy's like, you know, it's like pretty crazy. It's like really messed up. So like, you know, we have to really try to get people to understand like,
exactly,
this point that Krishna is actually like the Supreme Personality of God, and he's not just some like myth or like story or something like that, as you were saying.
Yeah, it's where we have to distribute these books, hold programs, preach, you know, speak the message of Krishna consciousness. That's another reason why I support, and not to just like hold some program where it's like super vague, where it's like we don't mention God or Krishna or anything like that. It's like, you know, I mean, that may be applicable for some time, place, and circumstance, but 9 times out of 10, like we should clearly state that like Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God and explain that. There's so many misconceptions, but anyways, you kind of like said it there, you know, this guy thinks that, so then we have to like get them to take a book so they can read and understand that Krishna's not mundane. Just like I know my friend's mother, she was like flipping out like years ago because she read that like Krishna had like 16,108 wives. So she's like, what the heck is this? Like God, like why is he married to so many women?
Yeah.
You know, is he so lusty? And so anyways, like explained to her that it's like, you know, it's not that. It's, you know, God is, you know, he doesn't have material lust or anything like that. But it's like, these are all like his devotees. They all like want to worship and serve God. So to facilitate that, he's accepted them all. And so that's out of his mercy, and it's just they love him and he loves them, and it's like it's based on that, out of just like pure spiritual love. And kind of some other things, but then like she understood, and she's like, oh wow, that's really amazing. Actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Wow.
So just like, you know, people have misconceptions, but then it's like it's our duty to actually like speak what we've heard and like clear that up.
Yeah.
So and then it's like, so we have to like distribute these books. There's also too, just like one thing is like, when we distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, also what's this word I'm looking for? It gives, you know, vidya, the paravidya, of course, transcendental knowledge, but then simultaneously too, it kind of like brings to light like any impurities. Just like if you're like boiling, like if you make ghee, you have to boil the impurities out of the butter. So in order to like, you know, like we're in sadhana bhakti, so impurities come out, anarta nirvritti. So when we distribute books, the impurities of society come out, misconceptions come out. That's natural. So then we bring it to light, and then we, you know, okay, that's, you know, your anartha, you know, and then we like explain that, so you have to remove that, you know. Otherwise you won't understand Krishna properly or make advancement.
Yeah.
So devotional service, book distribution, bring all those things out. So. You have anything, Manaji? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai.